Okay, we are on the final stretch. So we've just about finished everything I could think of to make a good projectile simulator. We've got the buttons on the screen and whatnot. Now we just got to make them work, and we'll be pretty well set. One of the first things I want to do in this video is I want to come back up here and change my pixel meter ratio to 1. I like the big grid to start with, so I'm gonna switch that over so we just start with grid 3. And okay, so let's go ahead and, where do I want this? Definitely under our main loop. Where's my main loop start? Here we are, there's our main loop. Let's see, probably under this, draw vectors in manual mode, sure, we'll do it under that. Update labels, do I want this before updating labels? Probably, we'll do it right here. Draw vectors in manual mode. You know, why don't we do it right in between, actually, yeah, well, whatever. Why don't we do it right in between the always move its ball to the current X and Y positions and draw vectors in manual mode. That's what we'll do. So we want to be able to change the grid on the fly, right? So far, we've always done the grid stuff before our loop actually starts, right? So this isn't going to run during the actual, it only runs before everything else opens, right? If you change something, like if during the game right now, if I change this to 10 or 100, it's not going to run that because it's outside the main loop. So we want to put something in here to change our loop or our grid to the right size if we change the value while it's running. Hopefully that made some kind of sense. Okay. So if the pixel meter ratio is equal to let's just start with 100, and zoom button pushed equals true. So that now it's going to become kind of clear why we did the whole zoom button push thing. When we clicked on the Z1 button, we set zoom button pushed equal to true. Okay, so if that's the case, if someone has just clicked on that button, well, I want you to set the background image to, let's see, images and grid 1.png. Right? Okay. And then I want you to change the sprite image. So remember earlier we added on to certain sprites that we made, we added like second images. So there's dark areas, or there's dark button versions of the button and light versions of the button. So we did this for all of these. And so if we press, there we are. If we press in this case, the Z1 button, right? Then we want to change the sprite image of the Z1 button to the second image, right, that we've loaded in. Now I know I said 1 here, but a lot of computer stuff starts counting at 0. So 0 is the first image, 1 is the second image, 2 is the third image. That's something that's a little confusing to start with, but you kind of learn to think like a computer eventually. And since they just pushed the 1 button, we want to make sure that the Z2 button switches off. Now if it's already off, it'll just stay off, right? But if it was on a moment ago, we just turned it off by setting the image to the first one. Z3 button, we also want to turn that off, right? Because we didn't just push that, we pushed the 1 button. So I'm going to go ahead and, and the final thing we want to do is after all of that, we want to set the zoom button pushed value back to false, right? We ran all that, and now, so we've done what we wanted to do, and so now we're going to clear that out, and we're going to wait until someone pushes another zoom button, right? We're going to reset it to false, and the next time someone pushes a different one, or the same one, it'll set it to true again, and it'll run this again, and then it'll set it to false, right? So we're kind of switching on and off whether or not someone just now pushed the zoom button, one of the zoom buttons. And so I'm just going to copy that whole little thing. I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to change this to elif, and we're going to change this to 10. And if it's currently 10, then they just pushed the second one. So now we're going to change Z1 button to 0 and Z2 button to 1. Everything else looks pretty good. I'm going to, once again, I'm going to paste. And I'm going to do elif. And I'm going to change this to 1. And if it's 1, then they push the Z3 button, and so we want that one to turn on, right? So this is just again kind of a nice user interactive sort of thing. And now we want our little number displays to always set to whatever the current horizontal velocity is, whatever the current vertical acceleration is. Okay. And we could do it so every time we could do it down here. The one way to do it, and it would totally work, and if you approach it this way, that's totally fine if you wanted to do it this way, is just every time we push one of these buttons, every time we push, goodness, where'd they go? Every time we push one of those, the V minus, the velocity minus, the velocity plus, the acceleration plus, we just add it into there. Every single time we push one of these buttons, change the label to be whatever the current speed is, right? Or the current acceleration is. The other way to do this, we haven't done this yet, and so this is another good thing it's kind of another good learning moment here, is there is a not equals. I don't think we've done that yet, so we can set it so that if hvel readout dot text, so whatever the current text is of that, is not equal, see that exclamation point in front of the equal sign means if it's not equal to what I'm about to say, then do this thing. So I'm going to get the string from my active horizontal speed. So if my readout doesn't match what my current horizontal speed is, well then what do I want to do? I want to change that readout so it does match. Right? Change label of hvel readout to that horizontal speed. And this way, I don't necessarily have to worry about which button was pushed and program it for every single button. It's just, is it different than what it should be, right? Is the readout something different than the actual speed? And if that's the case, then go ahead and change the readouts to match the current speed, right? So that's kind of nice. And we're going to do the same thing with if our vertical acceleration readout dot text is not equal to whatever our, what did we call that, active vertical accel is, then go ahead, what did I forget? I didn't close a parenthesis. That tab told me something was wrong there. Okay, because I was way too far indented. Then we're going to go ahead and change the label of our VAccel readout. Excuse me. Oh man, I'm struggling. This should be string, and we're going to change that to our whatever the vertical acceleration actually is. So pretty straightforward. Okay, let's go ahead and check these things just to see if they're working for us. All right, I messed something up. Oh, I will never in my entire life ever get this right consistently. We do need 2 equal signs there because we're not telling it. I'm telling you this as much as I'm telling me at this point. I'm telling me this as much as I'm telling you. You get the idea. Okay, so first of all, if I press the, oh, I got an error. I can tell because my mouse isn't following here. hvel readout is not defined. Oh, my H shouldn't be capitalized. I'm making all kinds of rookie mistakes here. Let's see, it's too late. I don't know if anyone's looked at my clock, but I'm trying to get this finished tonight, and so I'm staying up later than I probably should. hvel readout. hvel readout. Okay, this should be lowercase. Okay, still getting errors. Active horizontal speed is not defined. Oh, I misspelled that too. Man, you guys probably saw all of this and we're just waiting for these errors to show up. Active horizontal speed. Cross your fingers. Here we go. Active vertical accel. What did I miss there? Goodness. Active vertical accel. Maybe it's just the wrong name completely. Active, no, I misspelled it up here. Active vertical accel. Active vertical accel. Okay, thank goodness, we've got something. All right, so if we press the zoom button, that glows now for us, and the units changed if we press the zoom 2. Now that glows. Our units did not change, however. We'll have to look into that. I bet I didn't bother to edit those lines when I copied and pasted. So this is why we test. But notice that our set horizontal velocity and vertical acceleration now match what our initial values. And if we press the -10, now it's 40 and it's 30. And so if we start our horizontal motion now, we should see, yeah, we're not actually matching up with the lines anymore, right? We're going 30 and then 60 and I know this is off, but remember we're actually on the third grid, so that's promising. We're going to go ahead and fix those problems. Let's see, where am I? Yeah, we want this to be grid 2, and we want this to be grid 3, right? And so now, if we are on grid 3, which we are here, and we go to say 30 like we did a moment ago, 30, 60, 90 should be just shy of 100. That looks good. Okay. And if we clear all, we've reset it, we've erased everything else. If we go to zoom 2 and we leave this, oh, we cleared, so we went back to 50. It's good to see that works. Go back to 30 now. Actually, let's go ahead and go all the way to 10. And if we run our horizontal, and so now our smaller grids are starting to make a little more sense because we can slow the ball down, we can do different accelerations if we want to, and so zooming in at this kind of a scale is really nice because we get a motion that's a little bit better fitted for this particular graph. Okay, so that's great. That's all seems to be working. We've got our readouts changing. I know there's one other thing that I want to do. Oh yeah, we need the manual mode toggles and the vector toggles. We want those to match. Okay. So underneath of this, we're going to add a comment that is change the toggled buttons depending. Could I make a more generic comment? Depending on what is selected. Okay, not pro level there, but if vectors IO is true. Okay, so if the vectors are on and vector button is pushed, right? If that's also true, so if someone just pushed one of those buttons, remember we set that up at the bottom there. If someone just pushed one of those buttons, then change the sprite image of the vectors on button to 1, and change the sprite image of the vectors off button to 1 as well. And then be aware that you've done what you needed to do and start waiting for someone to push that button again. Set the vector button pushed back to false, and it'll come true the next time someone pushes a button. Now, as you look at this, you might think, well, why did we up here, we set this to 0, 0, and 1. This means it's on, this means it's off, the 0 means it's off. Why would we put both of these to 1? When I defined the vectors on and the vectors off buttons, you'll notice that when you first start up, the manual mode is already glowing with one of them, the visible vectors is already glowing with one of them. So I actually, I did these a little differently. The zoom ones, none of them are glowing. They're not glowing until you click on them, right? So they're all set to 0 for the time being. See, when I defined and actually when you guys defined the images for the manual mode buttons and the vector mode buttons, where are they? Buttons, yeah, manual button. Okay, manual off button. You set the on to the on toggle, which is the name that I gave the brighter PNG. And you set the off to the off, not the off toggle. So you've actually set it so that the 0 image for the manual on button is already glowing, and the 0 image for the off isn't glowing. So the numbers match, right? Because you've inverted them here. So if you set them both to 0, then the off button will be glowing, and if you set them both to 1, then the on button will be glowing. Hopefully that clears that up a little bit as to why we're not. You could have, if you set them neither to glow, like we set none of the Z buttons to glow, you could do it the same way that we did the Z buttons. But since we defined the images inverse of one another, when we change them down here, we actually change them to the same thing. Where'd we go? I missed it. Here we are. Okay. So that's why we set them both to 1. Okay, now if vectors IO is equal to false, if the vectors are off and someone just pushed that button, one of those vector buttons, either one will trigger this to be true. Then what? Well, we want this same thing, but we want to set them both to 0. Right, so we're just going to go ahead and copy this. We're going to paste it in there, and we're going to set them both to 0. Likewise, with the manual mode, we did the manual buttons the same way that we did the vector buttons. So actually, we can just copy that whole big block that we just made there, and just swap this out for manual motion and manual button. Manual motion. Manual button. Okay, so if manual motion is true and someone just pushed that button, then set the manual on button to 1 and set the manual off button to 1. Manual. And same thing here. If it's false and someone just pushed the button, then set manual. Oh, I think I'm doing this wrong though, aren't I? We'll go ahead and change it anyway, but manual off button. So if it's true, that's actually how we start it, right? We start with manual mode on, and if someone pushes that button, we set it to false. So actually I should come up here, because I think right now we start at false, which isn't what we want to do in the long run. I'm going to start at true, because that's how I've got my buttons programmed. Okay, so, got some more errors. Vector IO, I think I'm missing an S there. Oops. Not what I wanted. Not what I wanted. Those are the videos I'm recording. Ah. Close. Why are you still here? Alright, we can close the videos. We don't need those. Here we go. Okay, we're back. Sorry. Vectors IO. That's what we want. Vectors. Vectors IO. Vector. Yeah, missed that. Okay. Run. Alright, I didn't get any errors. So manual mode is on. So if I push the horizontal button right now, it just takes the one step. One step. One step. So you can just keep tapping this button over and over. Hit the reset button. We come back. Vertical. Because I typed it in wrong, I'm going to have to go ahead and fix every one of those. Oh man, what a nightmare. Let's find vertical. Alright, you should have a C. I am sorry that you were watching this. Hopefully you didn't just blindly do what I did, because then you'd be in the same boat. You'd feel rather sheepish right now. Hopefully you caught that early. I know, because I feel sheepish right now. You already have called them all active vertical instead of some nonsense term, and you're sitting back and laughing at me. That's what I'm hoping everyone is doing right now, instead of living in my pain with me. Okay, I think that's the last one right there. We'll double check. Huzzah! Okay. All right. Sorry for the lousiness of my late night coding here. But if we do vertical now, okay, we get it. We get the manual motion just by pushing buttons. We reset that. We do the combined just by pushing motions. If we reset it again, we can do the horizontal as well. Now if we clear everything and we don't want to see, oh, what's going on here? Okay, so initially we want the vectors to be off. So let's go ahead and fix that too. I've got those set to be true. So we're going to come up here and we're going to set these to be false to start with. Because the buttons appeared to work. They did turn off when I pushed the off button. Okay. So now, let's see. So we do the horizontal motion. We do the vertical motion. We do the combined motion together. Excellent. If we clear that out, we turn the vectors on, we get some vectors. That's great. If we reset, we get some more vectors. That's great. Combined. This looks amazing. And if we reset, we keep the vectors where we have them. And so you can actually, if you want to start messing around with like low gravity situations, right? Maybe we set the vertical acceleration to 5 and we do another combined motion. You'll notice that we get a new path because we're not, gravity's not pulling down quite so hard. And you can compare the new path to the old path. And we could do one with like 25. And so if we do our combined motion now, we get a much steeper path. And so you can compare these things with because we can push these buttons on the fly, it adds some more functionality there. If we clear everything, it gets rid of it all. And if we turn manual mode off, nothing seems to happen. That's no good. Okay, something's going wrong there. Let's check to see what we're doing with the manual mode button. This is more debugging here. So if we push the V button, C button, that's not what we want. Z button, V button, H button. Okay, manual off button. Manual mode should set to false. Okay, that looks good. And manual button pushed set to true. Where's my issue here? What did I do wrong? Manual off button. If sprite clicked is manual off button. Okay, and if manual motion is false and manual button pushed is true. Okay, this all looks pretty good. What did I do? Oh, I bet I left manual mode in there, didn't I? Yep, I'm sure that's what I did. Yep. Let's set manual motion to false. Okay, that should work now. Again, checking on our bugs. We test as much as we could think to test. So now we're just going to go ahead and start. So now it went over to the off switch, so that looks pretty good. If we run the horizontal button now, we get some nice smooth horizontal motion. I can probably even turn vectors on the fly. Yep, there we go. So we got those working now. If I turn them back off, we don't have any more vectors. That's pretty cool. And likewise, we're going to do the vertical, and we're just going to do our debugging checks here. We'll make sure we can draw vectors if we want to. We won't draw vectors if we don't want to. And we can do a combined motion with vectors off, with vectors on. Okay. I think with that, and again, this probably could have been done a lot shorter if I didn't make so many mistakes in this one. But with that, you have a completely fully usable with on-screen buttons. Oh no, our clock isn't clearing. What is this? What is this? We're not. I'm sure what we're doing here is we're not changing our clock label. When we press the clear button, V button, V button, C button. Where's our reset and our clear button? So we're setting our clock value, but we are not updating our clock info. We're going to do the same thing right there. I'm sure there's probably, you can tell this isn't severely tested at this point yet. You might find more bugs if you keep working with this. And if that's the case, figure them out, right? You certainly have the tools at this point. See if you can't squash those bugs on your own. All right, so now we've got a clock. If we reset, the clock goes to 0. If we clear, the clock should go to 0 as well. Not the best test. I cleared when it was already at 0. So we've got it at 0. Okay, so now you have a fully functioning projectile simulator. Congratulations. Thanks for sticking with it at this point. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed learning a little bit of Python and a little bit of physics on the way.